Hello, welcome to Network. My name is Pumela Zondi with your technology and social media news. It's SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Newsnetwork at sabc.co.za on email. This week, our Twitter poll is asking you if you've ever owned an iPod. This iconic device that changed the way we consume music is coming to an end. Results of that are coming up later in the program. Firstly, here's what's coming up in this particular program. The destruction of infrastructure in Durban has affected some of the base towers or access to technology infrastructure that makes sure that we are able to connect. We also have details on the popularity of TikTok in South Africa. In our discussion, we look at the importance for us to RICA our SIM cards, as we are finding out that some of those pre-RICA'd SIM cards are used in sending money to terror organizations elsewhere in Africa. The destruction of roads and other infrastructure has affected access to base stations and network towers that are needed for us to adequately connect. Now, Vodacom has taken us to some of those roads and the infrastructure that's been destroyed so we could see for ourselves what's happened. And they say that they've replaced batteries and installed generators to some of those that they could do that on. But MTN and Vodacom are telling us that the work to fix them continues. We spoke to MTN about this.
Yeah, if you look at the situation in KZN and the floods, it affected everyone, including MTN. Basically what we had was, when the floods hit, we had about 500 sites that were impacted. So there are different variants in terms of the damage and the disaster that we had. Some sites we had fiber totally washed away. We had infrastructure washed away. So we had different variants of basically the damage done to our infrastructure. But in terms of damage, yes, there was infrastructure damage to the MTN network. How the mobile network is designed is that in the area that you're sitting in, you don't just have one base station. You have multiple base stations. So if one base station goes down, infrastructure goes down, you will get served by another base station. So what we've done from our side to make sure all areas have at least coverage. So if you tell me like a KwaMashu or Umlazi, we made sure that at least there's coverage in that area. There are sites definitely impacted in certain areas, so there might be no coverage in certain, I would call it, we call it dead spots in the network, but in the area we've ensured that at least there's coverage in that area where people can go to and at least get communications. I mean, what we've done, we understand that everyone at that point in time needs a communication. So MTN basically set up a war room to understand firstly the impact. And once we understood the impact, we make sure that every, I would call it cluster or suburb, has some type of communication available to people that are affected by the floods. So we basically deployed, we deployed almost 40 engineers, field engineers, to areas where we could get to and attend to the issues immediately. That allowed us to get into there. We deployed basically additional 51 mobile generators, because you can expect that in a flood like this year, infrastructure, all infrastructure in terms of utility will be impacted, which the mobile network is dependent on as well.
The technology skills brain drain is something that often gets discussed in South Africa, as a lot of people with the needed tech skills are leaving for other countries. But there's an initiative that says people can gain access to skills that are provided overseas while they stay in South Africa. Here's producer Lebo Mokomela.
This is Refilwe Matlati, a cybersecurity and data protection professional. Following her graduation from the University of Pretoria, Refilwe says finding employment was a struggle.
So I had to get a master's degree before I could start working for one of the big 4 consulting firms. Just because it's like getting a job it wasn't easy at the time. It was in 2016. So it was challenging getting employed. In my field, when I was looking for employment in my field, I searched for months and months. And when I finally got the interview, I had to beg them basically to give me a chance.
Even after finding a job, Refilwe says work conditions were still not favorable. citing salary disparities which she feels were based on race. This led to her seeking out opportunities overseas, eventually settling there.
I resigned from my job without a backup because I just thought, well, this is not worth anything because I am still you're treated like garbage basically. So the US has here's a market for people with my skills. So someone found me on LinkedIn and they were like, we have a boutique consulting company. Are you interested in finding out more about this company and possibly migrating to the US? And I was like, of course, who wouldn't?
A report by an international software company, Salesforce, recorded a skills mismatch of over 50% in South Africa in 2019. In e-commerce, there is scarcity of highly skilled South Africans. One of the reasons cited is that there is massive brain drain.
Let's be honest with it. You could be skilled as a systems engineer in South Africa, but that does not really put you at a global scale, right? Because of our educational system, it is very backwards. So you've got people graduating and still needing to upskill themselves with relevant skill sets to make themselves attractive to employees or other job opportunities. So you've got people that are really now, with the access of now internet, I'm able to do a Cambridge or a Harvard course while at home. Now that puts me at a global scale. So now people are really starting to put those to use and saying, listen, not only is that giving me access to the global market, but also just financially, right? Because obviously, if you were to be employed in the United States or in Europe, financially, that is much better than being employed as an engineer in South Africa.
Another country that has opened its doors to South Africans is Estonia. The small European country of about 1.2 million people is allowing South African startups to set up shop there through what they are calling an e-residency program.
An e-residency essentially is a government-run program that we give people around the world Estonian digital identities, and with that they can actually establish and run an European Union-based company 100% online. So in a way we want to be like a country, like a platform that people can use to become more global and access new markets and enjoy our e-government services that Estonian citizens can enjoy as well.
They say they will screen those that apply. This is to avoid cyber criminals.
Estonian government just does, Estonian police and border guard agency, they do a basic background check on each person, and it's really they're interested if the person is criminal or terrorist. They will probably look into databases, they will Google that sort of thing, and when something comes out then they can take away the residency status.
Based in the northeastern part of Europe, Estonia has largely embraced new tech. They even run through an e-government and more than half of the population votes online.
During South Africa's hard lockdown, TikTok became really, really popular. It was often said that it's the 18 to 24-year-old age bracket that is the most prominent on TikTok. But we are finding that some of the elderly are using the platform as well. It's producer Sandile Hlangane with this one.
Unlike her mother and siblings, Lily Ebert survived death at the German Nazi concentration camps in 1945. After the camp was liberated, Ebert made a promise to tell her story. Now, at 98, Ebert is keeping that promise in a way no one could have imagined in 1945. With the help of her 18-year-old great-grandson, Dov Foreman, Ebert is telling her story to millions of people on TikTok.
As a young person, I'm often taught to be wary of the dangers of social media. Hate and misinformation and Holocaust denial and anti-Jewish racism, but racism of all kinds, spreads like wildfire on social media. But I recognised that there was a space that was missing, a space for education, and a space not only for education but to combat the deniers, to combat the misinformation, to combat the people who say that the Holocaust never happened or that Hitler missed the Holocaust survivor, and I realised that there's a void that needs to be filled and we should be the ones that can do that. Somehow my great-grandmother's found words to she says it in the book, you can't explain the unexplainable, but she has to. So she finds those words to do so, And I thought, well, if people can go viral on TikTok or Twitter for dancing and playing with their dogs and cats, then we can too for spreading these important messages. And thankfully the response we've had has been very overwhelmingly positive.
In her videos, Ebert is open about the horrors. In a video viewed some 25 million times, she held out her left arm to show the number Nazis tattooed into her arm.
That is a 10,572. That is what I was. And I didn't call me. I was not my name. We were not humans. We were only a number. And we were taken also only for a number.
While TikTok is primarily the domain of younger audiences, older users are also becoming increasingly active on the platform.
I think what it truly represents is the fact that TikTok is a community that celebrates and, more importantly, encourages diversity. So us as a platform to see that, me representing her is very important. But what we actually find is that the users and the creators and all those that are on the platform are resonating with this, and more importantly, are interacting and enjoying this type of content, or even content from elderly people. I'd love to give you two great examples. Recently, we've just completed or recently just launched a campaign called Freedom to be Me. It was in celebration of Freedom Day, and it was actually related to, a lot of the content was related to a very simple effect that we had with the South African flag behind users. And we saw some amazing content being created of users of all ages.
To some, it probably seems like just a lip-syncing video app for teens, but it's much more than that.
I use TikTok to watch people others videos, also catch up on different news, because it's very summarized. And when I use it mostly to show people how I transition from something to something else, or I use it as an acting platform, because that's where most of the people get their contents and become content creators.
COVID-19 has accelerated its rise. This has been the case for most social media networks during the lockdown, but TikTok's growth has managed to outpace the competition.
Definitely, I believe people being, by nature of being locked down, by nature of being at home, definitely supported the growth. But we also recognize, while people potentially, were in favor of downloading TikTok during lockdown, they wouldn't have stayed unless they were able to find the content that they get from these amazing creators in the region, and certainly wouldn't be able to stay on the platform unless they had a safe environment as well as a diverse community of content creators and users which they're interacting with and enjoying on a daily basis.
Since their first video on February 9th, 2021, the two have posted more than 380 videos on the app, drawing in 1.7 million followers.
The impact and not only the impact but the outcome of some of our videos has been unbelievable. So to share those moments together is really special, and we're invited to Buckingham Palace to meet with Prince Charles, who wrote the foreword to our book, and it's moments like those that we'll remember forever, but even more so the moments where we're just able to spend Shabbat together or sit here together now sharing these important stories. I can't even say how honoured I am to have that responsibility, to know that I'm going to continue my great grandmother's torch and hopefully light millions of other people, young people's torches.
Tech analysts say seniors like TikTok for some of the same reasons as teens. It's fun and entertaining, and if they choose to post videos, it's an easy way to express themselves and build a community.
What's great about TikTok is that it allows the older generations, your boomers, to connect with their great-grandkids and create content together and learn how to use those platforms, share stories with new audiences together. And I think it's that connecting element, the element where it feels like it's just regular people sharing their regular stories, that makes it such an easy platform for older generations to migrate to.
Another key driving factor in the TikTok's app's popularity is the fact that despite being a global app, it has a strong focus on localized content.
Sure, and again, to give you some examples, case in point, music, Amapiano, for example, the growth of Amapiano and the use of Amapiano locally, and then, very excitingly globally, with the hashtag Amapiano sitting at over a billion views, is exciting because it means that local users are interacting with that type of content. They're also drawn to it, and more importantly, the platform has given local content the opportunity to be showcased on a global level.
The current popularity of the TikTok app is astonishing, but still does not guarantee that it will ever reach the levels achieved by other social networks like Instagram and YouTube.
SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram News Network at sabc.co.za on email. After the break, we chat about why we need to RICA our SIM cards. This as we find out that those pre-RICA'd SIM cards that we sometimes buy have been used to send money to terror organizations in other parts of Africa. It's SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's News Network at sabc.co.za on email. Now, in the last couple of days, we've been reading reports that there is money that was meant to be able to send remittances home for African diaspora communities that's been sent to the Horn of Africa nations in order for it to fund terror organizations there. Now, reports suggest that this money has been sent through spaza shops and machines, specifically in those spaza shops that have been hijacked from certain spaza shops, especially in the Gauteng province. Now, we also reading that what's enabled this to happen are SIM cards that you buy already RICA'd. We do know that the RICA process was only supposed to help solve crime, and you are only supposed to RICA a SIM card once you buy it while using your ID document or your passport if you are not originally from South Africa or a South African citizen. Now, to help us understand the RICA process and what it was meant to do and how this could have happened is Yaron Asabi. He is the founder of the Digital Solutions Group. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us, Yaron. Maybe if you can start by explaining to us what the RICA process is and what it was meant to do in the first place.
Important, it falls under the Know Your Customer regulation in general. RICA is obviously for telco, but it's a very similar process for financial services, which is called FICA. And one for insurance called phase. And the concept is that obviously we've got to make sure that the person who's receiving the service is who they are. And in case of crime being associated with that particular cell phone number, you can track, if there was money laundering or if there was a particular crime that was happening, who the person that's behind it. So it's very important that we validate the SIM card and the person who's using the SIM card under the Know Your Customer kind of regulation, which in South Africa is called RICA.
Now, in this particular case, we're hearing that it's because the RICA process hasn't happened as it should, and you can buy pre-RICA'd SIM cards. What can happen if one buys a pre-RICA'd SIM card or if one sells a pre-RICA'd SIM card?
So the issue is that, it's fraud. You're giving somebody else's identity, and that defeats the whole object of the Know Your Customer process. And therefore, both the person who's doing it is doing it illegally, as well as the person who is receiving the SIM card. They want to make sure that not somebody else's profile is linked to their SIM card. In case there will be fraud with that SIM card, they might have the allegations posed against them, and it will be a huge hassle. So the idea is that the whole process of Know Your Customer is to make sure that the person who's actually using the SIM card is validated, that you can know that that's who they are by either providing the RICA currently asks for your ID number, as well as proof of residence or utility bill that shows that you actually, living in that particular location, and your address. And all of these fields have got to be validated. If they're not validated, then it's just up to the customer to give the input. So a pre-RICA card defeats the whole object. The whole idea is that when you get your SIM card, you've got to be identified that you are who you are, and then only can you actually enjoy the services from the service provider. It's the same in financial services with FICA or with phase. Before actually getting the product, you need to be identified and validated.
Some people might think it takes too much time and perhaps maybe too much documentation in order for one to RICA a SIM card. What would you say to that?
The whole RICA process can be done under a minute with facial recognition or by voice biometrics if you wanted to add those facilities onto it, which is going to be a requirement going forward. So it doesn't take that long, and if you have the right appropriate technology. What's important is the validation process, and there are some amazing technologies that both the big networks, MTN and Vodacom, use, and some of the other networks, I think, are using similar technologies that allow you to have Home Affairs National Identification Service integration, which means that you can validate that that ID number exists and belongs to that particular person. And you need to do that as part of the process of the KYC or RICA. And therefore, I think that it's really not a correct statement. I think that it can be very easily done, and it's very important. It's very important for the service provider. It's very important for the consumer to be able to protect their identity. And seeing that we are, such a mobile driven continent, I really think that it's really, really important that the RICA process is done correctly, especially when you want to do financial transactions. Just like you're willing to do it for your credit card. As you know, mobile money is by far bigger than credit card and debit cards in Africa, and especially in South Africa. Maybe not so much in South Africa as in other countries, but even in South Africa it is bigger. So I really think that it's important that you are able to validate the person, especially if they're going to be doing sensitive transactions on their SIM card, or these days there's a lot of phishing that's happening on SIM cards and cyber security risks. So it's really, really important to be able to protect the identity of that customer.
Yaron Asabi, founder of the Digital Solutions Group, thank you very much for being a part of our network. With that, let's take a short break. SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Welcome back. Here's what else took place in the rest of the world in the tech space.
Onatola Onajobi is having a great time at the elderly care home in Lagos, Nigeria. Onajobi is wearing a virtual reality headset, allowing the 77-year-old to listen and watch some of his favorite musicians and their music videos. Onajobi used to be a disc jockey in his heydays and says the VR unit has helped him connect with music more intimately than ever before.
The virtual reality stuff is more the gaming thing for the youth. But there's so much potential that it can offer in the place of health and improving their well-being and their health status as well. So that is why I started this. And beyond that as well, I feel like the virtual reality can help seniors to really, in place of mental health and also in the place of brain health as well. Some of these elderly ones actually have dementia, which is known as memory loss as well. But what is important is that the virtual reality can help them to connect maybe with a popular musician they grew up knowing or listening to. So reliving that moment, reliving that experience and finding expression, being able to dance and move their bodies in a way that it just makes them happy in that moment. And it's fine. It might be short, but it's important for them.
Adewale and many others who operate in the VR space say use of the technology got a boost during the pandemic and the restrictions that have to come with it. Adewale's Art in Medicine project also supports people living with sickle cell anemia. And now in India. A robot using new spray paint technology has reproduced artwork by a child prodigy on a car with zero waste. The technology, called Pixel Paint, is akin to an inkjet printer and allowed a robot to faithfully reproduce a complicated design by renowned Indian child abstract artist Advait Kolarkar.
Advait is very inspired by artificial intelligence, robots and technology. So when we were approached to have Advait's artwork painted on a car by a robot, and when Advait came to know about it, initially he could not believe, and he was very excited how all these things are going to happen, because robot is one fascination he has, and that was going to happen for the first time ever. So that was such an amazing thing for him.
The robot also sprayed a recycled SUV with a 3-color futuristic pattern by Dubai-based digital design collective. The system is now undergoing trials with major European car makers and could open the door to mass market personalization at a more affordable price. And now in the USA. Meta Platforms Inc. opened its first physical store where shoppers can try out and buy virtual reality headsets and other gadgets as the company plots a course to take its highly touted metaverse mainstream. The 1,550 square feet Meta store at the company's Berlin Game campus in California opened its doors on May 9th and said it will feature demos for its Quest 2 VR headset and video calling device Portal, as well as smart glasses it produces with Ray-Ban.
Apple's iPod is coming to an end after 21 years. And now it changed the way we consume music, and it brought almost bankrupt Apple back to life. This week, our Twitter poll is asking you if you've ever owned an iPod before. Now, 48% of you say yes, you have owned an iPod. And in the majority is 52% of you who say no, you have not. And that's it. So that's all we have for you. Find us on SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's News Network at sabc.co.za. Amen. From me, Spumelele Zondi, and the rest of the team. Have a good one. Bye-bye.